Hi guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to the desktop for another retro RPG. And keeping up with my cyberpunk theme that I've been doing this week, here I would like to present Night's Edge, an alternate reality sourcebook for Cyberpunk. Now this is by Anus Games, and they licensed the Cyberpunk 2020 rules from Artelzorian Games. So this is an alternate version of the Cyberpunk world. Mostly it's the same, except in a dark future, only vampires own the Night's Edge. This is the Vampires sourcebook for Cyberpunk. And really, it does quite fit. If you think of Cyberpunk world, you think of dark streets, of pouring rain, of cities. And if you think of vampires in the modern age, you think of dark streets, probably pouring rain and miserable weather, and cities. Vampires stalking the streets is very much a cyberpunk kind of setting. Now, obviously, Cyberpunk itself came out in 1990. This came out in 1992, but funnily enough, in 1991, Vampire the Masquerade was released, and vampires were the incredibly cool thing. Cyberpunk had been a cool release. Shadowrun had come out, and the cyberpunk ethos had been interesting. But then Vampire the Masquerade was released, and it was massively popular, not only with role players, but outside with the goth community. It was a very cool game outside just role players. And I think that Anus Games was definitely targeting some of that market here. I don't know how successful they were, but I really like it. So let's have a look at the back cover. The night is a wonderful place. You can live in it forever, and some of us do, without being noticed if you don't want to. Those who live in the night better have the edge, the Night's Edge, for there is a special kind of people who live there. You might call them leeches, vryolakas, vampires, or monsters, but then again, they might call you cattle, meat, or lunch. And beside, name-calling is so childlike. The bottom line remains that even if you don't like them, you gotta respect them. Law of the jungle, you know. And the night is one huge jungle, complete with its predators and preys. Some may want to reverse the roles, make the hunters hunted, but they are few. Most are just happy to not be fodder, food for them. Live and let live, I suppose. Night's Edge is an alternate reality sourcebook for Cyberpunk 2020. It's the first in a series of modules and sourcebooks that brings techno-horror to the world of Cyberpunk. It contains rules covering mostly vampires, but also their brethren, lycanthropes, and werewolves. And also are rules for vampire hunters and psychic powers. And that's kind of what it covers. And if we open it up, first of all, I have to compliment the artwork. I love the artwork in this book. The dead eyes that they put in the vampires because they are soulless abominations against nature, I absolutely adore that style. They're very cyberpunk. They are very vampires. I love the artwork in this book. High credits to them. Introduction. So it introduces you to the idea that this is being written by an older vampire to acclimatize his younger brethren to both vampires and the cyberpunk world that they're coming from. Hunting the night. So we start off with how vampires live in the cyberpunk world. But we go straight on to excerpts from the Better Vampire Hunting Manual. Vampire Hunter Organization, the Sun Knights, Heartburn. And we've got hunters here. And we go through the Sun Knights, where they've got knights, rooks, bishops, based on chess pieces, of course. Inquisitors, how the church is hunting them. And that's something Cyberpunk never really touches on much, too much on the religious side, but I do like it. And we go through cyber vamps, so people who use cybernetics to become vampires, and obviously hunters can get confused, and people who are posers who dress up, so basically goths and emos and the like. Something it touches on here is that hunters will use cybernetics to boost themselves, but a vampire's body rejects cybernetics. I can't really find it mentioned too much elsewhere, but basically their biochemistry is different, so no cybernetics can be installed. but their regeneration abilities as well, their ability to heal back massive damage, basically forces cybernetic replacements out of the body. Children of the Night. So then we get on to vampires themselves. As I said, I love the artwork. This of the cyberpunk style guy glancing over his shoulder, bearing his fangs. The fangs here, ready to bite. We go into the legends, so stories about vampires, whether they work or not. Now, does garlic force a vampire back? We detail, sorry, I skipped over this section, how much blood you've got to take from a vampire to be converted. It's taking a more sciencey edge than much role-playing, because we are in a technological age here. The age types of vampires, so fledglings are 0 to 1 years old, right up to ancient vampires over 1,000 years old. And that's something the game touches on, that ancient vampires in the past would have been these white-skinned, still perfect beings. But in the cyberpunk world, where there have been nukes set off and there's background count and radiation hazards and the ozone layer doesn't exist much, the radiation has caused vampires to become deformed. So younger vampires look human, but as they get older, they look less and less human. So ancient ones look rather sort of cancer-ridden. Even though they're immortal, they don't look good. Again, lovely, lovely artwork. Very cyberpunk, very vampire. Talking through the appearance of vampires, covens of vampires, how to create one, the elements of mankind, disease, drugs, poisons, and radiation. So, as they get rads, lesions will develop on the face, cancers will develop on the body. Physical degeneration continues, is not fatal though. How vampires feed in Cyberpunk, what damage it does to a target. I love that, with the Cyberpunk character with their pistol ready to shoot round a corner while a vampire looms behind. There, the strong man with the frail-looking female vampire, but obviously she's much physically stronger than a human. What they can eat, whether they can hibernate, so vampires can skip by years without living through them. High stakes and losing your head, a staked vampire there. Their senses, how much more sensitive they are. Sunburns, what sun does to them causes them to burn. Medical vampirism, so how people can get illnesses which give the effects of vampirism without actually being, which could confuse hunters. And then a page talking about don't make your vampires superpowered. They should not be like this. They should not be launching themselves off because they've got incredibly beyond human abilities. Again, a very shadowy image, but with the fangs bared. Like it a lot. So, as vampires are older, if you're creating a character who's been around for many hundreds of years, they'll have accumulated a large amount of money. Creating their personal backgrounds. Sanity and suicide, because all the crazy things they've seen over their lives, their sanity will be slipping. The world situation, talking about vampires in different countries and different areas. Introducing some of the more famous vampires of the world. Dracula, Elizabeth Bathory, and then 2 lesser known ones just created for Cyberpunk, Thomas the Demon and Lydia. And then the author of the book himself, Von Konos. And we've got a section on powers of the mind. So if you want to create vampires with psychic abilities so they can dominate a target and bring them forth and have Vampire the Masquerade-like abilities, it's incorporated in here. Although it does warn that perhaps that's making it a little too much like Shadowrun, that it's not very cyberpunk-like. But it is making them out as they are psychic powers rather than any kind of magic. Again, love the artwork. We go through the different abilities, the ranges, gaining new powers, astral space. We've got telepathy powers, so control of animals, charming people, curing people, hypnological, mental assault, sensory abilities, telepathy, ESP powers, so seeing astral space, seeing the future. Psychokinetic powers, so freezing things, controlling electricity, healing, controlling matter alteration, psychokinesis, pyrokinesis, so they can emit flames and all that. Radiokinesis, the actual ability to control radiation, so you can zap people with rads, or you can actually force the radiation out of your own body. And then teleportation, which I think's a bit silly. The character can move at such incredible speeds that it seems instantaneous. They've got ranges up to 10 kilometers instantaneously, just through sheer speed. Not sure about that. Self-control abilities. Psychic focus, transform, regeneration. And then we've got gateway into the night. So, vampire character creation. And a couple of sample characters. And then we've got the lycanthropes, which, as we're over 2/3 of the way through the book, are very much an afterthought thrown in here. I'm guessing that Werewolf the Apocalypse had just come out and they thought they'd put that in as well. They're not quite as well suited. It's really not a good idea to put werewolves in, but I suppose they can be an interesting enemy to throw into a world where vampires exist. Their different abilities, that they're sensitive to silver, just very similar stuff to werewolf, but in a cyberpunk kind of way. The lunar cycles, the hereditary nature of them. And then we've got a choose your own adventure style thing. Read 17, if you cloak, read 24. Just a wee introduction to it. And a short adventure, Overexposure, with some characters in there. And a few chapters of adventure. And we're on to the index. And a very strange oddity. We've got the nice character sheet here. And then on the flip side of the character sheet, we've got an errata for the book we've just read. So rather than go back and edit the book and fix the mistakes as they noticed it, they obviously realised they got a blank page on the back. So they just printed it on. Which seems very odd. But I'm guessing this was before the days of desktop publishing, and making permanent changes to a book ready to be printed wasn't going to be that easy. But that is Night's Edge. I really liked it. I liked the way it brought vampires into the cyberpunk world, because the two worlds do seem quite closely matched. The idea of highly advanced humans with cybernetics and weapons being hunted by supernatural creatures which hide amongst us, I really liked. It's similar enough to Vampire the Masquerade, to the Highlander TV series to a certain amount, and Highlander movies, that there's these mysterious people that live amongst us. But, as always, I think I've whittled on for quite long enough. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment below, as you do me absolutely massive favours with the YouTube algorithm. It really does make a difference. But, as always, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.